Malcolm Longstaff. I'm Brooklands Trust member here, and this is my 1953 Morris, which I've owned for about 14 years now. I acquired it in quite a bad state. It had an accident. This front wheel was pushed across. This headlight was in the middle of the car, and it had been that way since 1970. It wasn't a car I was looking for. I cleared out a garage for a friend of mine, and at the back of the garage this was sat under a tarpaulin. And we made a deal on it. I towed it home and started the conversion. He collected a lot of panels for it during the 70s. There's original front wings and a spare interior inside the car which he'd got from Ireland from a car that was abandoned in a ditch. But he'd got no further than collecting panels. There was nothing else done to it. First miner I've owned. I don't know a huge amount about Morris miners. I started with this one. Not even a car I particularly wanted, but it's not one I'd part with now. Having done a lot of work on it and converted it to a 4-litre Rover V8, which involved extending the front so that I could keep the original interior exactly as it was. Kept as much of the original car as I could, the interior and the paint on the main body is as it left the factory. And it's been a great deal of fun. I've sprinted it and I've hill climbed it. I've done a few track days in it. It gets well used, and when I break it, I'll fix it. Right, I've been playing with cars since I was 15. My first car was an Austin A35, which I rebuilt the engine and never ever got it on the road because my dad gave me a straight 6 Vitesse. So I ran that for a few years, which led to a 2-litre Vitesse. I've started building a Ford Pop with a 289 Ford engine, but got married, had to sell the car and move on. And in the meantime, I bought a 67 Sunbeam Rapier and gave it a roof chop and a lot of body work, and that was in Custom Car magazine and Alexander Palace in the early 80s. Then we had to be sensible with kids, and I bought a split screen camper which I restored and a Ford Anglia. And then as the kids got a bit older, I got a Opel Manta which I put a V8 in, which I ran for 10 years. And when it started getting a bit rusty, I moved the V8 and most of the running gear into this because I didn't want to rebuild it again. I wanted something different. Hence, it's got an Opel Manta axle. The engine, the original engine, has been changed now, came out of the Manta. Steering rack is Opel Manta. Front suspension is Triumph. It's a mix and match of different parts. And part of the reason for the format of this, and because of my Vitesse, I thought it'd be a much better car with a live axle. So that's what I've got on here. And the rear suspension on the Manta I thought was fundamentally flawed in the geometry, which caused a prop shaft whine. And I've cured that on here. So the two things I wanted to do to two different cars I've incorporated in this one. So this is my guinea pig. It's been modified over 8 years where I've changed things to make it go better, make it faster. I had a goalpost of 13-second quarters and it was 14.7 when I first put it on the road, so I changed to a 4-litre engine. It's now doing mid-13s at 100. Fastest I've ever had the car, it was at Dunsfold Wings and Wheels, and I clocked 6,000 RPM in 5th, which is 150 mile an hour at the brake point. Starting at the front, I wanted to keep the car as standard looking as possible, but to do that I had to extend the front 6 inches to get the engine in. And there's an awful lot of mods that most people miss. This front panel, I've reversed the seam on here so that it's bolted from the rear and not the front to get rid of the hockey stick. This bottom underneath here is an old bonnet corner welded underneath to pull the front round, so that I could run it without bumpers. To extend it, I split the bonnet down the centre, and as you can see, this, which was a parallel line, is now tapered. And I let in the grille at the back to give me a cold air feed for the engine. It feeds cold air via this ducting over the air filter. This I made at home on my hobby mill out of a piece of billet aluminium. I fabricated the inner wheel arches. Bulkhead is standard to bring everything forward, and welded 2 wings together. I'm using Triumph independent front suspension off a Vitesse, which is much modified, with an Opel Manta steering rack, Candy Classic uprights. It's got wheel with discs Volvo calipers, scimitar hubs, TR5 spindles. It's an eclectic mix of parts. The engine itself came from a Land Rover Discovery, and I've ditched the fuel injection and fitted it with a 4-barrel Weber. It also has quite a large hairy cam and big valves, polished and ported. It's been balanced. It's a SERP engine with a complicated belt gear at the front, which I've tried to hide as best I can under this cover. The radiator's from an Opel Monza, and this top part here is a dummy. That's my windscreen washer bottle. The header tank I made from a fire extinguisher. This takes the air bubbles out of the top of the cooling system, and then there's 2 pipes into the radiator to give you a flow. So when I fill the car, I just fill it brim full, and there's no air bubbles, and you get a decent cool. In the front of the radiator are 2 electric fans from I don't know what. They were something I found in the skip, brand new, but probably a Peugeot. These are now indicators. I have side lights in the headlight, but the semaphores do still work and they flash. Moving round, the front wheels are, or front and rear wheels are both from a Volkswagen Golf G60. The hubcaps are off a golf cart, and they're held on with a magnetic keep tray that you normally keep your nuts and bolts on, because I couldn't find any other way of fitting it. The front wings obviously have been extended, and there's at least 6 inches let in here, and to stop it looking quite so plank-like, I extended the sills underneath and deepened them slightly to give me a wing mount. So, moving back to the inside, it's almost completely as it left the factory, apart from the addition of extra gauges underneath the dashboard. There's a small light in front of the steering wheel, which is a shift light, which was originally an aircraft cockpit light. The brake servo, master cylinder and clutch master are all underneath the seat, out of the way so that they're invisible, still using the original Morris pedals via a bell crank under the seat. Gear lever and handbrake are both original fitments. And the small fire extinguisher beside the seat is an oddments box. If you turn it, it's all the bits and pieces that you can't find anywhere else to put. The rear wings have also been widened an inch, and to keep the curvatures I widened them and lowered them slightly so that it didn't look too modified. The tail lights are replica 40s Ford tails lights, just to give it a slightly different, cleaner look. And where the bumper irons came through are now my indicators. I've also fitted a tow bar because I do tow a small caravan and a motorcycle trailer. This that was originally a reflector, I've machined that out, and it is now a high level brake light. It's got an LED light inside. And inside the boot, which is my daughter's idea, this is my fuel tank, which is an Opel melter tank mounted back to front. That's the filler, and she suggested I've covered it in a suitcase so that it doesn't look quite so untidy and more in keeping, more stealthy. What was the fuel tank is now hollowed and has my spares and tools, and obviously a space saver rear wheel or spare tyre. The rear axle is also coil sprung, and it's running discs, and it is my own design of suspension with a watch linkage and a torque tube so that it is well anchored to the floor. And the only thing the axle can do is move from side to side over a bump. And to one thing I would add, the very first time I came to a show here, there was quite an elderly fellow walking around my car, and he turned to his friend as he's walking off and he said, "I've never seen so much done to a car to make it look like nothing had happened," which is exactly what I was aiming for. So that was one of the best comments I've ever had, I think. And the other one thing I have is a hidden radio. Old radio, modern radio. And these that used to be wheel arch intrusions are now my speaker pods, so everything's hidden. A bit of a waste of time because I never listen to the stereo, I'd rather listen to the engine, but nevertheless, it's there. Okay, but to drive, apart from having a fairly heavy clutch and obviously no power steering or ABS, it's pretty much a seat of the pants sort of drive, but the engine's ever so flexible, makes you a really lazy driver. As you can see now, I'm in third gear, fairly